Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 20th anniversary of the Jewish Film Festival of Fairfield County. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Nancy Schiffman, and I'm the Director of Arts and Culture at the Stamford Jewish Community Center. The Jewish Film Festival of Fairfield County has a 20-year history of bringing current award-winning films to the Fairfield County community. And we are thrilled to be following a hybrid model this year where folks who are comfortable can join us for in-person screenings together as a community, face-to-face. And for those who prefer to watch in the comfort of their own home, they can enjoy our award-winning films as well. So if you know someone who might be interested, please direct them to our website, www.stanfordjcc.org/film festival, because being virtual means people from anywhere can enjoy our films. We have 4 more fabulous films to enjoy, and whether you view in person or at home, we invite everyone each Sunday to join us for a Zoom Q&A to hear from film directors, producers, and expert speakers like we're doing tonight. Before we start, I would like to thank all of our sponsors, both individuals and organizations, who, through their generosity, make this festival possible. And although we're not at the State or the Garden Cinemas any longer, we would like to thank the Friedman family and Garden Homes Management for their continued support and dedication to the Jewish Film Festival of Fairfield County since its inception 20 years ago. A special thank you to AJC Westchester Fairfield for their sponsorship of the festival. Please join us for their 2 sponsored films next week and the week after, entitled White Right, Meeting the Enemy, and A Starry Sky Above Roman Ghetto, both followed by Sunday Zoom Q&As with AJC expert speakers. I would like to especially thank Monica Schlesinger-Smith, a current JCC board member and longtime JCC member, who was instrumental in facilitating our partnership with Abilis for the screening of this incredibly moving and poignant film, Here We Are. And of course, I'd like to thank Abilis for their sponsorship of this film, along with the Stamford chapter of Hadassah and Young Israel. Lastly, I'd like to thank our festival co-chairs, Jennifer Kaufman, Debbie Lee, and Lisa Popper, along with our tremendously dedicated festival committee members, too numerous to name, who work endlessly year-round screening hundreds of films and are tasked with selecting the top 6. No easy feat, and they do a magnificent job. Before I introduce our panelists for tonight's discussion of the film, I would like to share a few things about the film. Here We Are is an Israeli drama based on a true story made in 2020. It won 4 Ophir Awards out of the 8 it was nominated for, which is pretty impressive. Ophir Awards are the Israel's Emmy Awards, and it won Best Director with Nir Bergman, an Israeli writer and director with over 2 decades of experience in film and television. Among his prior well-known films and TV series, for those of you who might be familiar, are Broken Wings, Saving Netta, Intimate Grammar, In Treatment, and In Therapy, to just name a few. In addition to winning Best Director, it won Best Screenplay, written by Dana Idesis. This film was based on Dana's family and the relationship between her own father and brother. It also won Best Actor for Shai Avivi's performance of Aaron, the father. And it won Best Supporting Actor for Noam Imber's incredible role as Yuri, the son. I'd like to share a few things that I found out about the film after doing some research that I think you're really going to find interesting, especially as this came up in some conversations while we were preparing for this Q&A. So Noam is not autistic, and in an interview with the director, Nir Bergman, he said it was very important that he find someone who can perform as authentically as possible. He felt a tremendous amount of pressure to accurately portray autism, and he wanted to do right by Dana and her family as he knew them well. He said they initially tried to look for someone on the autism spectrum that was an actor, but found it was very difficult. And he said that it's very uncommon in Israel to find someone on the autism spectrum with a good amount of acting experience. So they ended up putting out a casting call, and Noam, the actor who played Uri, came and performed incredibly impressively. Noam had grown up with many folks that were on the autism spectrum, as his father ran a program. And throughout his childhood, he was drawn to spending a lot of time with the people in the program. And in fact, he now currently works with individuals on the spectrum. They also did a tremendous amount of research, kind of observing and talking with many individuals and parents to try to capture an accurate composite picture, as really no two individuals or families are exactly the same. And we'll talk more about it, but I think they did a wonderful job capturing many of the things that families experience. And in fact, to help us digest the film a bit further, as it pertains to parents' desire to protect their children and the challenge of letting go, really a universal process, whether you have a child with a disability or not. It's my pleasure to introduce tonight's panelists. Joining us tonight is Luis Velasquez, the Vice President of Day and Reach Services at Abilis. He provides oversight to all supports under the Day Services umbrella. This includes, but not limited to, LEAP transition supports, Project Search, competitive employment services, Abilis businesses, and Reach supported living residential supports. He's been with Abilis for 21 years and has been in the field for 30. Welcome, Luis. Wow, you're a busy man. We are so thrilled to have you join us tonight. Thank you. Also joining us tonight is Kris Burbank. Kris received her certificate in leadership coaching from Georgetown University's Institute for Transformational Leadership and is pursuing additional credentials through the International Coaching Federation. Kris has experience coaching people at all stages of life to enhance their skills as parents, partners, and professionals. Following a rewarding communications career with Procter & Gamble and several leading public relations agencies, Kris founded 2 municipal commissions on disability in Stamford and Fairfield, Connecticut, and a very special nonprofit called Team Wolfgang and Company. She has also served on a number of nonprofit boards and consulted for numerous organizations in the disability space. Kris loves hard work and collaboration, especially when it facilitates positive change, personal transformation, and increased fulfillment. Her curiosity, compassion, and candor helps clients celebrate their stories and bloom where they are planted. Kris, what a pleasure to have you join us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. And our moderator tonight is our very own Jane Faherty. Jane has been working in early childhood for over 13 years, and for the past 7 has been the director of JumpStart at the JCC, a therapeutic early childhood classroom experience for 2-year-olds with special needs. She oversees inclusion initiatives at the JCC for all ages and community partnerships that seek to support individuals with disabilities, as well as their parents and siblings. Jane says she loves all the hats that she wears, which includes leading an incredible team, being a special education advocate, and a special education consultant, as it allows her to work with and support the most incredible children and their families. Wow, what a panel, and how exciting it is to have all of you join us tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Before we actually start and before I hand the floor over to you, Jane, I just wanted to let the audience know that we welcome questions at any time. So please feel free to click on the Q&A feature, typically located at the bottom of your screen, and enter any questions you have for our panelists at any point during tonight. We also wanted to kind of get a sense of who's in the audience with us, who's joining us tonight. So we're going to do a quick poll, and if you can answer the question, there should be a question in front of you in a moment. There we go. If you can answer the question and hit submit, we'll give everyone a few minutes to kind of get this together so we can really get a better sense of who's joining us tonight in our audience. Wonderful. This is great. I'm going to give it another second or two because it's hard to know if everybody got a chance. So we want everyone to get a chance. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and let's share the results. And as expected, we have a very diverse audience. We have a large number that are just community members that are interested in being with us tonight, but we definitely have some folks with disabilities, some parents and caregivers, some family members, some friends. So really all of you are just so welcome to be here tonight. We're very excited to have all of you with us. And with that, I am going to turn the floor over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much for the introductions. We look forward to seeing you later on this evening. And thank you for bringing us all together. So it's great to have you here, Luis, and you here, Kris, as well. And it seems that we have a very diverse people watching tonight, which is fantastic. So at least 24% were families, 14% parents, 10% were people that identified as having a disability, and 48% community members with 10% friends. So I think it would be great to start with Luis. If you can explain in terms of, so the situation with Yuri was that the parents placed him into a facility which was a little bit more institutionalized in the Israeli model than I think that we typically would find here in Fairfield County in the state of Connecticut. And I think because we have a diverse audience watching tonight, it might be really helpful for them to understand what you do in Abilis and kind of the typical model that is available for parents and adults transitioning from home and school into the community and the world of work.
Sure. So transitions is a very, very big part of our day services. It's we find that we provide we start working with families mostly in transition through our LEAP services. We connect with families via schools, families reaching out to us. And the typical entry point for those young people coming to our program is our LEAP services. And those are transitional services. So we start with a young person in the school system, and we facilitate the movement towards adult services, not only for the young person, but for the family as well. That's a very, very important part of the process. So that program is community-based. It is a full-time program where young people are learning skills towards independence in the community. So we're working on things naturally. We're not sitting in an environment and providing instruction. We're providing the instruction in natural settings. Part of the transition from that program to a next step is our internship opportunity. So we have a project search program that is an internship to work program. It's full immersion for a young person who is on a line to work competitively to gain employable skills. So we have a program at Greenwich Hospital. We're launching a program in Darien at the YMCA. And essentially, again, a full-time program where young people are in a hospital. They are assigned three different internship opportunities over a 9-month period. And they're really working in an environment as part of a team to not just work in a hospital, but to be a marketable employee.
So in the movie, we saw that when Yuri's parents were maybe at different stages in their journey. The mum was more comfortable with Yuri going off and trying to live more independently within a supportive community. The father, however, felt much more of a stronger connection to his son and was a bit more protective and had a different ideal as to what his son's future path could be. So Kris, when you're meeting with families who are at the beginning of this journey, transitioning from what's been a more structured environment within the school district, for example, to then transitioning out into the community, Kris, how do you support the parents in understanding the options available to them and their child, but also helping them maybe at times come together and because we might not all agree as parents, you know, we have different perspectives, we have different life experiences. So how can you help bring that together for the family to make it less daunting as the child does transition to the next phase, Kris?
It's a great question, Jane. One of the things that struck me as the parent of a 25-year-old who has severe disabilities, and just as a parent, is just how lonely the parents in this film seem to be. And so when I think about the programs that Luis and Abilis do, or the kind of work that I do with families of young people who are reaching adulthood who have disabilities, a lot of it starts with trying to prevent that situation of loneliness. So connecting people and helping them recognize that there is a community there, and helping them work to define what that community needs to be like as they age as parents and as their children age as adults. There are a lot of options. You know, in the film we saw one option, and yet independence looks very different to all different kinds of people. Again, just as it does with neurotypical children who are growing up. But it starts, I think, with the building of a community and recognizing what kind of support and community will best help your family.
Yeah, in the movie, it seemed as if there was just one social worker that came to the home. The lady that came to the home, she met with the father, she met with Yuri, and then she had a private conversation or wanted private observations with Yuri. For both you, Luis and Kris, what would it typically look like when the parents begin this journey? How, you know, what are the organizations that would reach out to them? And what are the type of the individuals? Are they therapists? Are they social workers? How do those pieces come together when you're at the beginning of this search?
Our entry point with families is usually with an entire team of people. We want to reassure people that we know what we're doing. We want to offer opportunities, and we want to provide them information. So I have families access our program, visit with us, spend time with us. I like to visit every applicant to our program. So we're spending time with school supports, we're spending time with that team, we're spending time with the child, the young person transitioning to us. So we come at it as an opportunity to reassure families. They're very different systems. School systems to adult services are very different. And just that transition alone, the application process, applying for services, can be very daunting. So we have someone on staff, for instance, who's a benefits counselor. And the ability to be able to offer that service to families helps answer a lot of questions and alleviate a lot of the anxiety. But we hit you as a team. We come with lots of expertise.
I am a huge believer in the value of team work as it relates to this journey of taking a child from a young age with a disability all the way up through adulthood. And as Luis said, we've benefited tremendously from, you know, therapists and social workers and special educators. And there's even a systemized process called a MAP, or a mapping experience, which Luis knows all about too, where you actually, in a very systemized way, gather everybody into a room and you talk about your biggest fears, you talk about your dreams. The person with the disability participates in all of this, and so that voice is heard. One of the things that is not really addressed in this film, because it's Israel and they have a different kind of system, is the cost associated with growing up and growing old, and not necessarily being able to work full time and have a job and pay for yourself. And in the United States, it's really important for there to be organizations and teams of people like Abilis and other community groups, because once a young person gets to be the age of 21, they're no longer the responsibility of the school district. And so the goal for the families that I work with, and really even the friends and people that I've known in my life and my own family, is to have a team that you start to build at a young age, and that grows with your child.
Yeah, and actually in the state of Connecticut now, it's now age 22, which is great that they've increased the age from 21 to 22. And you're right, the thing that was not addressed was the fiscal responsibility. It seemed in the movie that the father at one point had quite a successful career doing illustration of some description, but they did make reference to the fact that he hadn't worked for a certain number of years because he'd decided to be the primary caretaker for his son. And that all transpired. We discovered that when he went to visit his friend, who was also the artist as well. And financial concerns, I'm sure Luis and Kris can certainly speak to that people have as parents, and you, Kris, as a parent. I know that with my families, it's also very important that even if your child, it seems like 22 is a long way down the road, or 18, but it happens very quickly. And it's really important to start putting those support pieces into place as soon as possible. So financial planning is something that we're lucky enough that there are experts within our locality that you can access and contact. And if you're watching and you would like to have some of those details and information, you can certainly contact me afterwards, and I can put you in touch with some financial planners who specialize in this realm, supporting family with different accounts like Able accounts, putting together trusts and so on. Because the planning, Kris and Luis, you shouldn't really wait till close to that age. You should really start putting those pieces in place much earlier on. The movie, it seemed that it was kind of had happened fairly quickly. The courts had made a decision and that the child was then going to be transitioned. Whereas Luis, from what you were saying, you really take time with the families, with the adults, the young adults, getting to know them in their home, getting to know them in their educational environment before you then make recommendations for the community setting. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. I find that is the best way to prepare a young person to access our services, is to be an integral part of the family planning process, the team process with the schools, so that we can carry over the supports, the appropriate supports needed, and then help this young person advance through internship opportunities, work opportunities, residential opportunities.
You know, the movie, Jane, makes it seem, I don't know how you feel about Luis, but the movie, it's very black and white, right? Mm-hmm. The mother is ready. She's worked to get this young man on a waiting list, and she's done her due diligence. The father can't let go. And yet it is so vastly gray, as I'm sure many of the people on this Zoom call, if they're working with people who have disabilities, know, and with families, it's very gray. And so I think a lot of it has to do with starting at a very early age to just open yourself up to different kinds of perspectives. Not every young person wants to live the same kind of life, right, with or without a disability. And so yet every young person becomes an adult, and understanding what those choices might look like. Independence for my son, who's 25, what he wants is going to be very, very different from what somebody else's daughter down the street or around the corner might see for themselves. And so it doesn't just happen that all of a sudden we wake up and say, oh, it's time to move out, or it's time to do this or that. There can be these steps along the way, just like there are with typical children, where more and more independence, whatever that looks like, is gained.
Yeah, and that actually leads into one of the questions that we've just been asked by an audience member. Are there more programs available? And this is to both you, Luis, and Kris. Are there more programs available to help ease the transition slower, like respite weekend type programs away, so that the parent and the adult can become more comfortable before a larger transition takes place?
We find a great entry point for young people to get to know us, to get to know other young people, is through social opportunities. We have a very rich social calendar, and with our REACH program, our residential supported residential program, that's how we got all these young people to get to know each other and to meet new friends and to really feel comfortable about working with us. That's usually a great way to get people to do you get somebody in doing a fun activity. It's a great way to form a partnership and friendships.
I think the other thing, again, so much of it depends on the age of your child, but if your child is young enough, really pursuing summer camp opportunities, whether they're day camps or even overnight camps, depending upon what the child's medical and behavioral, condition is, it can prove to the individual that they can exist outside of the family unit. And it can prove to the parents that things will be okay, even if they're not there and they're not 100% in charge. And I think safety, so much of this movie is about fear. And so starting at a young age and teaching young people who you can trust and how you can advocate for yourself is really, those are opportunities that you want to try to look for.
Yeah, and I go back to your first point, Kris. You mentioned loneliness, that the parents seem to be lonely, particularly the father, because we focus more on his feelings and his relationships through the movie. Even the one, he seemed to want a relationship with the woman, but wasn't able to get to that point at that time. He seemed to miss work, but didn't feel that he had the capacity to continue with some of those relationships in the work world. So I'm guessing that the other piece to this, in terms of being comfortable and ready for transition and doing it slowly, is if as a parent you start to connect with other parents and caregivers of a similar stage to you, but also some that are maybe further down the track than you, that can also broaden your horizons, help make you feel less alone in this journey, and then you can definitely share and bounce ideas off. So with Luis and Kris, through JumpStart, we do parental social engagement to bring families and parents together to connect socially and recreationally, and through that develop friendships and relationships that can then share experiences about their journey and their children's journeys. Is there anything more formal or any other places that you would recommend, Luis or Kris, that parents and caregivers can go to broaden their understanding of what is available in the community, but do it through the lens of parents that are already on the journey or within the system?
Sure. Yeah, we love to facilitate parents getting together to spend time together to start forming bonds and working together towards common goals. We offer lots of opportunities for parents to come to meet our staff. So we have regular open houses, and we have training opportunities. So we're bringing families in to talk about our different programs. We're bringing families in to talk about some of the financial challenges that come with transitioning to adulthood. So we're offering opportunities to get people together now virtually, hopefully soon all together. But we're offering families those opportunities to meet our staff and to gain information, and that helps build connections.
And I would say too, sometimes school districts will have not just a PTA, but they'll actually have a special education PTA. I know when I lived in Fairfield, it was incredibly active, and it offered parents the opportunity to liaise with each other. And maybe, I've benefited tremendously from knowing people who have children who are 3 or 4 years older than my son is. And like you said, you learn as you go. And most people who go through something and learn want to be able to share it with somebody else so that they can learn too. The other thing is that now more than ever, there are all kinds of groups online through Facebook and Clubhouse and other kinds of social media networks where parents can connect and can then, make friends and have conversations offline. And I actually have a free newsletter that I provide to anybody who signs up for it, where I profile a lot of these things. And I'm happy, to provide that information to people as well.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Thank you, Kris. Because that's the thing, is that sometimes there's so many resources out there. Like there might be programs that you offer, Luis or Kris, you have your service coaching and supporting families, but it's really hard for families to know where to start and who to go to as they begin the transition process. It seemed in the movie that the courts in this instance led kind of the charge in terms of dictating or telling the father at some point, this is the decision that's been made, this is where your son is going. We didn't see the preamble as to whether they'd looked at lots of different places, whether they found that this one was a better fit than another one. We didn't get a sense of that in the movie. The only thing we got the sense of is that somewhere along the line, the father must have shared enough insight about his son, because at the end, when we saw that he went through the door, the automatic door, and they drawn the circle for the button, they clearly had a conversation with the father. But I know that came after the fact, when they first of all, Yuri struggled with the transition into his new home. So what was interesting in the Israeli model that we were presented with in the movie versus probably what you've experienced, Kris, and you deliver, Lewis, is that normally you sit down with the parents, you would have found out some of those things beforehand so that the environment would be ready for the transition as well as the young adult.
Can I just make a point about the movie? Because I love when this happens. My interpretation of that last scene was different from yours, Jane.
Yeah.
I actually watched the movie a second time, and it hit me like a ton of bricks when I watched it, because my interpretation was that it wasn't the father who told anybody. It's that Yuri was in a place with people who figured him out. And they actually figured out that they needed to draw a button on the door. And that was kind of like the message to the father of, oh my goodness, there are people here who understand him in the same way that I understand him. And I think sometimes, as you see in the movie, and as we all think we know our kids better than anybody. And there's this weight sometimes when you feel as though their safety and their security and their happiness is all dependent upon you. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the other bit that I liked was when Yuri would eat any pasta, not just the star pasta. And the father was surprised by that. Because I guess that's the other thing with transitioning, and Lewis and Kris, is you transition a child when they're, maybe 22 at this point. But then you want to transition into an environment that's going to continue to grow with them and support them as their needs, their wants, their interests change. So how does that work for children that are now out in the community in Stanford or Fairfield?
Planning, making the family an integral part of the team, and really focusing on measurable and achievable goals. So it's again, going back to teams, it's including parents, including state supports, including our team here to really listen. We love being a part of the MAPS process. Kris mentioned the MAPS process before. We love planning. We love being a part of that process because you talk about dreams. You talk about things that may seem unattainable, but with planning and proper guidance, achievable. So lots and lots of planning.
So for those families who might not be familiar and watching tonight, in terms of the MAPS, the planning that you do, how far out do you plan ahead for?
So we did our first MAPS session, and it's truly a session. It's, a facilitator comes in, it's sponsored by the school, it's paid for by the school system. Parents can ask for the school system to cover the cost of it. And we started our first in 5th grade. We did another or probably 4th grade. We did another in 8th grade, which really helped us figure out what high school needed to look like. And I think one of the things that's most wonderful about the MAPS process is that the individual themselves is really a part of it. One of the things that you saw in the film, this was so obvious to me, and I'm sure this will resonate with Lewis. There were so many times when Yuri would turn to his father and say, do I like yellow? Do I like, I can't even remember what they all were, but often looking for somebody else to answer for him. And I think that what happens in a MAPS process and anything else where you're really soliciting input, you can dig into what matters to the individual. And the other thing that's really great about a MAPS process is that everybody's equal around the table. So in my son's case, he has a lot of physical disabilities, and I'm going to give a shout out to my niece, who's a physical therapist, and so many great physical therapists. He has physical therapists who know him better than many of his teachers because of the way they've worked with him. And if you have a MAPS process, those people all have an equal voice, and they can share what they know and what they hope for. And you can do it again repeatedly throughout the course of a person's life. What do you think, Lewis?
What's a good way to look at someone's life? It's very comprehensive. And so we continue that process in adult services, and we look to focus planning on core areas. So we find it such a valuable tool that we implement it in everything that we do. I mean, we're really looking at holistic, we're taking a holistic view of someone's life and planning accordingly. And that includes financial supports, work and day and residential and social and educational. And so we're making sure that we pay attention to those core areas in everyone's life. So there's a lot of individualized planning. Goals are individualized. We want to make the experience meaningful so that the outcomes are positive for these young people.
You know, we talk often about a three-legged stool, and it's the same for all of us in life, but it's particularly clear for individuals who have disabilities. There's this piece that is friendships and social life and all the activities that Luis mentioned earlier. That's one leg. The other leg is a job and the ability to contribute to a team and the ability to experience success in that aspect and to pay for the things that you need in life. And the third leg is where you live. It's hard to have a three-legged stool that sits really stable 24/7, 365 days a year. And so at any given time, I think you've got all different priorities, and sometimes it's wobbly. Often it's wobbly.
And I think in terms of the three-legged stool that you mentioned, what was interesting in the movie is that Yuri's dad really felt that he had to be responsible for each of those three legs, and that he wanted to drive the social as well as he wanted to be involved in each aspect. But I think sometimes as a parent, we can't. We have to give the young adult that independence to figure some things out for themselves. We might have an idea what their interest is for employment. And I'm sure you might come across this, Luis, but when you meet with a young adult, they might have a different idea of what their interest is or where their interest lies that might deviate away from, in this case, it would have been a difference between Yuri and his father. So how do you manage those situations, Luis?
We see it all the time. We see young people who come to us with very clear ideas about what they want to do, and the parents having something very different. Planning, and so as part of, let's say, career, if a young person has a very specific career path they're looking at, we implement a career plan. So we're looking at, it's like a maps tool where we're really looking at core areas where a young person can be independent in the workplace and planning towards that. So through that process, some of this gets more realistic, and sometimes you see parents and young people coming together with realistic ideas about work and internship. But our planning tools are our best way to get that solved.
Jane, I think so much of it is about this ability to let go. And it's hard enough to do with a child that is neurotypical. But when you have somebody who you feel responsible for, the more natural thing is to control and to exert that control in the name of safety, in the name of taking care. And after a while, that's my identity. That's what I am. And that's what people are telling me. Oh, you're good at that, right? You're a great dad to him. I mean, you're a great mom. And it doesn't need to even be, Luis is talking about selecting a job. It doesn't even need to be anything that sophisticated. I remember when my son first started getting hair on his face. And I was like, we are a clean shaven family. And I remember he came home from camp and he had a full-on beard and I said, why do you have a beard? Did they not shave? He said, I have a beard because I wanted a beard.
Love it.
Right. And which is one of the reasons I thought it was so funny that, bad people have beards, according to the movie.
Yes,
Sorry,
that's
Luis.
right.
Sorry, Luis.
That was a funny comment.
But I think that's so important to honor the experience. This is dad identifies himself so closely to this. You have to respect that. You have to honor that, but then facilitate growth for independence for the young person, because that's so important. I remember the scene in the car specifically when he's with his ex-wife and he starts to cry because she asked him. And it seemed like all he wanted was to be asked about the process. So that's so important, involving families, asking those questions, allowing them to express fear, and then trying to reassure them through this process. Because the transition process, I always find, is harder for the parents than for the young people. The young people adjust very quickly. They want to move on. They want to be out of a school system. They want to be in a new place. They want to experience work. They want to experience independence. They want to be with their friends, just like all other young people. It's the moms and the dads that hold on. And so,
well, and do you remember, Louis, and Jane, in the movie where he's talking to the ex-girlfriend, I guess, about, I think it was her mother, and he said something like, I think he said something like, you should feel really good about the way you took care of her. And I was struck by that, because I think there is that, right? We get praise for, and we get feedback from our loved ones for taking care. It's the rare young adult that says, thank you so much for giving me my independence. Thank you so much for letting me grow a beard, but that is equally important.
And the theme of sacrifice, you see it all through the movie. He sacrifices relationships, he sacrifices the job, he sacrifices many things to give his son, a good life. And so, again, those are things that we want to know from families. We're talking to families, we're spending time with them, so we get to know that and honor that.
Yeah, you're supporting everybody through the transition, not just the child. You have to support the adults as well, and their needs are going to change too as time goes on. So it's important that the parents' support changes. Kris, you mentioned, the parents then get older, so they're going to need support in different ways through your organizations or other social groups too. And as they get older, I know from my friends that are dealing with it, they're in their 60s now, that they are getting very anxious and concerned about what the next stage is going to be for their child. In the event that they become unable to live life to the fullest extent that they've been used to as well. So it gets very complicated the older the child becomes and the older the parents become too, as the natural course of things tends to go off kilter in this capacity. Have you come across a lot of that, Kris and Louis, in your journey?
Well, I just want to quote somebody from Abilis who told me something really wise to that effect many years ago. And she said, parents come with an expiration date and we don't know what it is. And so our job with all children is to help them become as capable as they can be to exist and thrive once we are no longer able to assist in that area. And that might mean when we die, it might mean when we ourselves encounter some sort of health crisis. But it's not a natural thing that happens. It's something that you have to, it's very easy to just be in denial. I'm never going to need a hip replacement. And yet that's not the case. And so part of what I think, making these connections that we talked about earlier with other parents, or working with organizations in the community like Abilis, where we start to see what might something else look like beyond just life as we know it. What are my options? What are his or her options? And we start to become more comfortable with that. And then we actually can be brave and ask the questions that are really hard to ask.
And I think that was touched upon in the movie, and that particularly the scene on the train station where he realized that there would come a point that he would not be able to support his son, Yuri. Should he, have an out, he's getting stronger, he's getting bigger, he's getting more physical. And you could see the physical strain and the physical challenge of trying to help support and regroup Yuri in those moments. And I think it was touched upon a bit later that he realized it would be unsustainable for him to keep their dynamic as intense as it was between the two of them without allowing it to be shared by others in the community, because it would be unsustainable at some point.
I wondered about the whole Charlie Chaplin thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I watched the movie the second time, I noticed that there's a scene in the Charlie Chaplin movie where Charlie is actually feeding a child and caring for a child. And I think one of the things that was really great about this movie was that it used the film, which is all make-believe, the Charlie Chaplin stuff, to reinforce some of these experiences that this family was having. And then it also used real life, right? It used that horribly poignant scene when Yuri is just having such a difficult time on that train platform, and nobody stops to say, how can I help? And also, I think, I can't remember where they were, maybe it was on a bus ride or something, and the bus driver was going on and on about, they have like, this is a miracle. Yes. They can remember all the
savants, they can draw, they can sketch the whole of New York City. Yeah,
I'm sure if we had a parent here who had, an individual in their family with autism, we'd get a completely different perspective. But I think they did do a really, from my experience anyway, they did a really nice job of illustrating the complexities of this moment in time for this family.
Yeah. One of the sweetest moments I liked between the father and the son, it was fairly early on in the movie, was the bicycle scene, where Yuri found it very difficult. He thought there was going to be a snail, and he was obviously very concerned about, or scared or fearful of the snails. And the father got off the bicycle. And I love the modeling. And I know that within the workplace and transition, modeling is really important. How we model, when we model. Right. But the way in which the father did it, he got off the bicycle and he just did the big footsteps. To me, I just thought that was beautiful. It was a lovely moment between a father and a son, but it also, to me, spoke to what we do in our classroom. We do lots of modeling for them, and we give them coping mechanisms, and we help them work through something in a way that's, more appropriate and so on. And so I'm sure that modeling Luis and Kris is something that's very important throughout the transition from the school into the community.
Absolutely. Modeling is so important for the workplace. Our internships have very specific curriculum that really emphasize specific skill sets, and so modeling is so important in that. And we find that teaching in the community is so important with teaching young people in real settings. So we're modeling appropriate behavior in a supermarket. We're modeling in community settings. We're modeling behavior and ways of interacting with folks so that they can, so that it's an effective tool to help them grow.
So just an observation, if I can, Jane, Luis spends so much time actually working with individuals who have disabilities and doing amazing things and really changing lives. Abilis does tremendous work. I work with the parents of those individuals, and I'm struck because I'm listening to this conversation about modeling, and I think we do a great job of modeling with young people who have disabilities. I think it's much harder for parents to find models. No, it's really hard. Trying to identify somebody who's gone before you and who did it right and who has enough similarities with your family. And I think that's why it's so important for parents to reach out to others and to try to find people who can help them take a step back and look at things from just the perspective of a parent. We spend so much time focusing on our kids, and we need to find models for ourselves too.
You're absolutely right. And with the families that I deal with, but often at the beginning of their journey, at the beginning, they might have just received a diagnosis, or they're just coming to understand what the diagnosis might mean and entail. And sometimes the families too get very focused upon their diagnosis and then only connect a network with others with similar traits or behaviors. but actually there's a real value to connecting with others beyond your own child's diagnosis, because even though your child might have very significant different needs, you actually, through those relationships and partnerships and friendships, you learn to grow and understand things in a different way. And that's where we keep learning and enriching ourselves. And you're able to have a slightly different dialogue than maybe connecting with others that are on exactly, on a similar trajectory to ourselves and at a similar stage that we are in our journey. So I think there's also, as parents, just to remember, don't always be driven by connecting with other parents with the same diagnosis as your child. There truly is enrichment and value in connecting with others who at the outset, you might think, oh no, our children are so different, our journeys are so different, but actually you will find that there's a lot of value to that, and a lot of shared experience that you do have, and a lot that you do have in common, but you might be coming at from slightly different perspectives, which can help you grow and see things slightly differently too.
And I'll just add to that, Jane, that it's other parents, but this is one of the great things about this whole team concept. If I had $1 for every piece of great advice that I've been given for my life as a parent from a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, a special educator, a swim therapist, a camp counselor, they get to know my son. And then they say, you really need to make sure you're doing X, Kris, for yourself or for, your family, or what, that support and encouragement comes from lots of different places.
Yeah, and it goes back to the oxygen mask, right? I mean, that was something that Yuri's dad didn't necessarily do. We saw that at the end. He was in such a terrible state at the end because he hadn't taken care of himself and his needs first before Yuri's, and then it led to that awful situation on the beach and and the downward spiral that we saw him going through. So we always have to remember, as parents, caregivers, to listen to others when they tell us that we need to take care of ourselves, because we really do, because it isn't a sprint, it is a marathon. As we saw in this movie, we're looking at transitioning these young adults into the community and help them grow, and continue to grow beyond. It's not just a short stint. You really have to take care of yourself so you can be there for the long haul.
So Jane, can I just take a moment to build on that for just a second? I think we have lots of people here tonight who identify as members of the community. And I think that what we saw in this film is that it takes community here. And often the tendency from a parent is to soldier alone and to bear a lot of the responsibility. You could see even in his relationship with his brother, that the father, he didn't share as much as we might. And so as community members, there are lots of opportunities to support people who have disabilities. There are opportunities to work with an organization like Abilis and provide an internship or a job opportunity for somebody, or to just be supportive, with resources, or to volunteer. And yeah,
Or if you see somebody struggling and having a moment in the JCC, just to stop and ask if they're okay, or if you sit down and have a cup of coffee with somebody to help understand their situation better. And just by talking and sharing, that can provide somebody with support in that moment too. So you're right, Kris, and we are part of a community, and we need more opportunities for everybody to be involved and included. And if this is a platform to educate and inform and bring people forward that have employment opportunities or internship opportunities, or just willing to come and connect and share with others, then we should definitely be doing that as often as possible. So nobody can do it alone. Whether you have a neurotypical child or a typical child, we all need support through our lives at different times, and different levels of support at different times, which was the other thing we saw in this movie. We saw the father at the beginning seemed to have things together and in order, and then by the end, luckily he seemed to pull it back, but it was very hard to watch him be so distressed and in distress at different times as well.
Well, tonight's a good start, so thank you.
Yeah, no, well, thank you, Nancy. Thank you for having us all here tonight.
I want to thank all of the three of you. Really a magnificent, robust conversation about this film. So many touching moments, so many life lessons, so many things to kind of reflect on. And I love this ending about community because as someone who's been at the JCC for over 21 years working, we are so happy to have people in our family, in our JCC family, walking through our halls with all different needs, abilities, interests, and that, to have JumpStart in our building and have families in our building and have all that we do in our building to kind of be a community all together, to learn from each other, support each other, and be part of that family has been wonderful. And Kris, I love the fact that you have a deep connection to the JCC and we have a deep connection with Abilis. I feel like, it's a wonderful coming together with all of us tonight. So thank you again for sharing your words of wisdom, sharing your support, sharing your hope. And really, if anyone in the audience needs or has any further questions, please feel free to contact me and I can forward along information about how to get in touch with any one of our panelists. And again, I don't know if there's any last words or last thoughts that any of you would like to share.
I'd just like to say, if you're in the JCC and you want to find out more about what goes on in our community with regard to developmental disabilities, or if you need help but you've not had the confidence to come forward, I'm always available. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm very confidential. We can meet, we can connect, we can share, sit down and have a cup of tea. So my door's always open. Just let me know and I'll be there to chat and connect with you. And when I can't, I'm lucky enough to partner with Abilis and other organizations in the community and definitely put you in touch with the right people that can give you the right support and information that you might need at any moment in time. So please reach out. We're always here to help.
Wonderful.
Can I just also say,
Absolutely.
I am so thrilled that there is a movie out there that addresses this kind of a family situation. And I am grateful to everybody who's here tonight who cared enough to watch the film and to engage in the conversation, because these are not always the things that get discussed. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thanks, Kris.
Families that have any questions about this process, it's a very difficult process. There's so many moving parts. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me regarding our services and how we can support your child.
We are really blessed in our community to have all of you available to our families, and we thank you. Thank you for being available tonight to share again your wonderful expertise. I also just want to thank the audience for joining us and for being a part of tonight. If you know of anyone who would enjoy the film, here we are. We still have an opportunity to watch until midnight tonight. So please direct them to our website, www.stanfordjcc.org/film festival. And also, I just hope that those of you who are out there will enjoy and join us next week for our eye-opening film sponsored by AJC entitled White Right, Meeting the Enemy, and to once again join us on Sunday night for a Q&A conversation with AJC experts. We look forward to having all of you join us for other JCC programs, whether in person or virtual. The Center for Arts and Culture at the JCC offers exceptional programming throughout the year, whether through film or book and author conversations, or our art gallery at the J with our art and wine receptions, our J Talks, book clubs, J Sacker, social action initiatives, J Cares, our volunteer initiatives, and so much more. So please check us out on our website, stanfordjcc.org. And once again, I really thank this fantastic panel. Wonderful to be all together, and I could listen to all of you all night long. So thank you so much, and everyone else, thank you so much, and have a wonderful, terrific rest of the evening. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.